In the summer of 1982, I packed up my two children, my daughter and my son, into a station wagon and we headed off on an adventure. I normally would take off for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on how long we would last, and we would just drive across the country. We went to Yellowstone, we would go to all these different national parks. And this one particular year, we found ourselves in South Dakota, Mitchell, South Dakota to be exact. Our neighbor happened to be there taking care of the estate of their deceased parents, and we camped in their backyard. Um, that's how we saved money. We didn't stay at hotels. We'd camp 3 or 4 days, and we'd stay at a hotel, clean up, and we lived on pizza and peanut butter sandwiches. But we were in the backyard, and the wind came up, and really bad wind and rain, and my kids and we were huddled inside, and the tent was shaking and everything. And I thought, wow, this is really kind of crazy. It doesn't feel right. Anyway, the next morning we look at the newspaper and we find out that it was like a tornado came through town and it knocked over the screen at the drive-in theater. So that was, boom, fell down. And a couple buildings in town lost their roof. So I was feeling a little uneasy about this. I thought, oh, we should probably get out of town. So we left. And my daughter wanted to visit some friends that she'd met in when she was horseback riding around Mount Rushmore, and they lived in Minnesota. So we said, oh, okay, they're down the road. We had an invitation. We'll go down there. So we're driving down the highway going into Minnesota. Just before we get into Minnesota, I get this nagging feeling that no, time to turn around. This is far enough. Let's go back home. And so, to great disappointment to my daughter, we turned around and we were going down the road. And about half hour, 45 minutes later, I'm listening to the radio and it's talking about a flash flood wiped out part of the highway that we were driving on. And had we not turned around, we'd been right there in the middle of this flash flood. So I thought, well, that was pretty good. I'm glad I listened to myself. We ended up eventually going to Estes Park, Colorado, because we wanted to go to Rocky Mountain National Park and some of the other sites around there. So we stopped at Estes Park. I was going to camp originally in a little tenting area below this old dam they had up the road, and it just didn't feel right. But just didn't feel right. I decided not to camp there, and I stayed at a hotel, and that was good for the kids because they got to swim in a swim pool and eat in a restaurant. And next day we got up and we rented a boat and we went out on the lake. It's a man-made lake and with an earthen dam, and we're out there and we're rowing and rowing. And I had that feeling again that this is not the right place to be. So we came back in early. I got rid of the boat. We packed everything up, checked out of the hotel, and I left town. The kids are going, why are we leaving? I'm going, no, we got to get out of town. And so we were in Rocky Mountain National Park when we heard the news that 4 campers had died and the old 80-year-old dam collapsed, and it was a wall of water surging through Estes Park and done millions and millions of dollars worth of damages to all the businesses. There was just this big stream of water, and I'm going, wow. Had we not checked out, our car would have been caught up in that mud and water coming through the town, and no telling what would have happened to us. Plus, had we originally camped in the campground below the dam, that's where all the fatalities were at because it just wiped out the campground. It was only about a 30-foot wall of water coming down, but that was enough to really, in this small canyon area, to really wipe everybody out. So we hurried up and finished our journey, and I kept thinking, I got to get home. Just the car didn't feel right. So we drive thousands of miles on this trip. And then we finally get within about 30 miles of home, and the car breaks down. And so then it was real easy. My wife came out, picked us up. We towed the car, had it fixed. No problems, and I was home. So it was the most interesting trip because I avoided a tornado. I avoided a flash flood. I avoided a dam collapse. And the vehicle breakdown didn't happen until our last 30 miles of the journey. So all in all, I would say it was a lucky trip. Kind of no pun intended, but it was kind of like the trip of the damned. I mean, but having a dam break, that doesn't happen every day. and that was kind of spooky. And so when I saw photos of it and images on television on the news, it was kind of eerie. So I always listen to my inner instincts, and it's just one more time that they proved to be correct.